Nikolina, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm well. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for jumping on in the middle of this heat wave here in the UK. Although if you speak to anybody abroad, then they say it's not much of a heat wave.
Yeah.
How are you finding it? How are you finding the lockdown? How's it been treating you?
Not too bad. I like working from home, so it's not an issue. London doesn't have aircon. It's the only real problem here. But yeah, this week has been nice.
I had to pull down the old manual fan which spins around, and it's doing the trick for now, so it's getting me through that and plenty of water. Cool. So thank you for connecting on. I mean, you're working on some interesting stuff, and I just want to kind of see if we can extract some useful nuggets for the people listening. So tell us a bit more about Glycanage. Give us, for those that don't know, a brief introduction into what it is, how you came about with the idea, and kind of just give us that breakdown.
Yeah, so it didn't really start with an idea. It started with technology. So I guess I'm quite lucky to have a father who's a molecular biologist, and he has a private research lab that started creating all of this amazing research. And then he had an idea that we can productize some of it. So one of it is a biomarker for biological age based on Glycomics. And Glycomics are not in mainstream use at the moment, so there's no commercial product using them. But they're a super interesting part of biology. So they're like this complex trait. Every living cell has a thick coating of glycans around it, and they regulate a variety of functions, including immunity, which is quite a hot topic at the moment.
Really?
So we have this first test in the market that measures biological age, and we've developed this care team that helps you reverse it. So effectively expanding your health span at least and giving you some extra time.
Okay, and so what kind of things would go into calculating one's biological age? Like, what are in layman's terms, what is it that affect my biological age?
So it's a blood test. We do it for dry spots, and we measure your IgG glycom composition.
What is that?
So glycans are not in mainstream. They're not yet like a popular term that you'll see used, but they are they're the fourth element of a cell. And they're like the ultimate layer of complexity that we have. So maybe if you want to compare, let's say, talking about COVID, so how we, so bacteria, viruses mutate by changing their DNA. We as humans can't change our DNA every single time we come across a pathogen. So we have these layers of complexity. And glycans here, they regulate your immune function. So you can also call it a low-grade chronic inflammation that would predictably go up as you age. And it would also change with the development of certain chronic conditions and just generally unhealthy lifestyle. So it's like this, yeah.
So what sort of things can I do practically or is it even possible to improve my biological age? Like
absolutely.
Now, and my biological age comes out as 62. Like, what can I do to improve that? Is there a way to bring it back to normal?
Absolutely. I think the problem is we all have this fixed mindset, which comes from maybe even focusing more on DNA and genetics, which is something that we're born with. And of course, we have epigenetics now layered on top, but most of the time, the common understanding was that it's something you can't change. So it took us a little while to explain this mentality, that it's something that's highly changeable. You can change it with diet. So with weight loss, even within a couple of months, you can see a big difference of 4 to 5 years. You can influence it with training, but a lot of people overtrain. So there's a whole science of doing training in the right way. So you don't just train hard, but you train smart, and then you have a positive impact.
Can overtraining then actually mean that you're worsening your biological age? Because that's because can overtraining, because I know a lot of people that don't overtrain, they don't take any rest days, can that actually worsen your biological age?
Absolutely. That was one of the first misconceptions we found. So we thought that we did this big study, 1,000 people going to the gym, and we thought that this will make them younger. So that was the first theory. And then we realized that most of them are coming back pro-inflammatory. And it's something we see in athletes. And when we look at competitive sports or even amateur athletes, they're generally higher on this marker than a general population, and it correlates with their career. So athletes have a very short career, but by the time they're 34 or 35, they're old, an old athlete. Well, when you're 34 or 35, your life is just starting. So it's kind of like this misconception that for health you should train as an athlete. And it doesn't work when you put it into practice, particularly when you're working with, so somebody who has a high stress job, and then you put them on like intense training, and it backfires. It does the reverse.
They're burning the candle from both ends, aren't they, man?
Exactly. So we see this a lot, and of course you can't not the opposite is just as bad. So being a couch potato and not training gives you also a higher result. But there is a whole science to it. So it needs to be very smart training. The first study we see show positive results was interval training in the form of sprints. And there, even within the time frame of the study, we saw them become anti-inflammatory, which is positive. So we're getting a bit younger. But when we looked at bikini fitness, which is professional bodybuilding for women, they would start off at a healthy baseline. And then when they would prepare and compete, they would go sky high, so really, really high. And then they would recover in recovery. So what we do now with athletes, we look at their recovery. And we try to optimize it in a way that it remains where it should be instead of going up every year. So
now, so in terms of, is there have you figured out the optimal number of days of training, or is it bespoke to every single person's kind of lifestyle and, like you mentioned, the job, their stress levels, and these kind of factors?
Very bespoke to the day and the week that you're training. And also there's a thing called training age. So you have to, it's something that would go up as you're more experienced, so you can handle more. So in the interval study we had with sprints, this was in a sports school. So the guys were already well trained. And although it was intense training, so intense interval training, it was positive of them because they already had a good training age. So it's you have to customize it to you. I think the biggest problem is that we don't personalize. And generally people don't know how to measure themselves.
Yep.
And because we generally work with people who are healthy, who are curious about longevity or how these efforts are impacting them, we find a lot of these misconceptions, like you can over diet. Like intermittent fasting is positive for longevity, but you can overdo it and then it's immunosuppressive. And even keto diet, everything, you can do everything to an extreme. So I think the biggest thing is regulating ourselves. That's where we fall short a lot, and that's where we help people see what they're doing wrong.
That's interesting. So something like intermittent fasting, the claims out there, the research suggests that's reducing your inflammation markers. But you're saying there's almost like a tipping point where after a certain level, it can actually become an immunosuppressant.
So yeah, I don't want to. Intermittent fasting is great, and there's some great research studies coming out of it and its impact on longevity, but it has to be measured. So in these studies, like for example, it was a 5-day fast in a 3-month period, and they saw positive effects. But when you put this into general public and they just read the beginning of something, it becomes popular. They don't read the recipe of how you should do it. They overdo it, and then they do it every day. And particularly if it's somebody who already has healthy BMI or even a little bit low BMI, and they've made their metabolism maybe a bit slower, they can do damage. So they can cause hormonal imbalances. They have high biological age too, and you can measure this damage. So it's really the problem is measure and having the right information and having the right guidance of how to do something correctly. And instead of just reading something in like a popular journal and, you know, giving it a try without having a good recipe for it.
I think that's part of the problem in today's age, even with business, which we'll come on to. Everybody's looking for the blueprint, and oftentimes there's no blueprint. It's about taking these tools which are proven to work and kind of adapting them to your needs. So when did the ability to calculate your biological age, when did that innovation happen? From how long ago could you actually start measuring this?
So we knew this long time ago. So our first study published and peer-reviewed was 2013. And there's not a lot of labs doing high throughput glycomics. There's about 2. And this is something you see when you look at populational data. So we can, the moment we started doing high throughput, we can see that this is something that predictably changes with age. And we could even, just by looking at glycans, we can tell somebody's age, chronological age, with a ±9 years error margin.
Okay.
And then when we looked into this +9 years error margin, it correlated with every known factor of an unhealthy lifestyle, like high BMI, insulin resistance, cholesterol, and so forth. So we named it biological age. And so that's where it came from. And then since then, we've had 10 years of research and more than 80,000 people tested in research cohorts, and we've learned a lot.
So from 2013, just want to delve into that a little bit more. So from 2013, the technology, the innovation happened. It was now possible to check out the glycans. How cost prohibitive was it at that point? Was it impossible to bring to market at that point? And how did you go along that buyer education of helping to explain what this product does to the layperson? Because that's the crux of this problem, right? I know there's been products recently, such as Ancestry, where people are becoming now intrigued with their ethnic makeup and their origins going back. So how did you, has part of your journey been riding that curve, and how from 2013 have you really started to get the price point down, which critically we need for business, but also start educating the population about why it's important, how easy it is to do, etc.?
So we actually launched in January this year. And prior to that, I had another 2 startups that I was building in between. And I invested in my father's startup and took the CEO role. 2016, we knew that it's something you can change. So the first question after we knew that we can calculate it is this something you can influence? So can you reverse it? And that was a small study, 2016, in a nursery home when they put them on an exercise regime and diet, and saw small improvements. And then since then, we did more high-level studies, like the recent one with 2,000 twins, followed over 20 years, and the twins that reduced their weight, reduced BMI, they would come back younger, and the guys who gained weight, they would come back older. So 2016, it was still too expensive, so we did plasma. So the whole logistic process, you need to have a nurse, you need to have a lab who separates the plasma, then you ship it on dry ice to the lab, and then you have a 2-week chemical process there, which ended up being like a commercial cost would be $600 per test. And at that point, it was still too early for us to say, yes, you can change it. So just telling you that you're older and charging you £600 for it didn't quite work. Yeah, so it took us some time to do these intervention studies where we can see what impacts it. And now we know how to personalize and recommend intervention programs. So it's still pretty early stage. So we started with some clinics just before 2020, so just before January. And then we had some good sales agreements with clinics, and the COVID came and everybody closed down. So we focused on consumer. And we did quite well in the last few months. We have a number of subscribers now, and it's scaling quite well.
Cool. So how does the model work then at Glycanage? So how often does the average person need a test? How do you guys ship that test, and how does the feedback come back? My score can I see it online? What's the kind of setup there?
So at the moment, so if you're a consumer, you can order online. We ship as soon as possible. Then at the moment you send the sample back to us, it's a 2 to 4 week process to get your result. And then once you have a result, you're paired with a specialist. And now it depends. So if you're already healthy and you were just wanting a confirmation for this, we say test once a year, maybe somewhere close to your birthday, because we're still talking about age. And if you do take an intervention, so you're gonna try to lose some weight, you're going to take some dietary improvement, or even try stress reduction. So we're non-biased into what the solution is, and it's very personalized. So our physicians actually recommend this based on your questionnaire, which would look at points we can improve. So if you already have a healthy diet and you train, we would focus maybe on stress, or if it's something else, they will focus on that. And then if it's diet, after 3 months, if you're doing professional sports, we would say even once a month, which is quite a lot. You need to have a bit of a budget for it. And if it's with one of the clinicians who are finally starting to open up now, it can even be hormone therapy. So we have a lot of, we have this interesting thing that we can see when menopause happens. Mm-hmm. But this is not your market. I'm not just sure if you want me to go into it.
People will be listening.
Okay, yeah. So we can see when women go for menopause, they have a sharp drop, and it's a predictable, increase in biological age, but a drop in the anti-inflammatory markers.
You can see it coming and start preparing for the eventuality. So just you're getting that kind of heads up.
No, well, we work with clinicians here who either do just lifestyle intervention at that point, or they do hormone replacement therapy. And with that, we see positive improvements. So we see it either completely mitigate the damage, or you can even see positive improvement. Awesome. So it's yeah.
So I know it's still quite early days. What are you seeing as the biggest kind of customer profile you're seeing adopt this the most at the moment? Where are you seeing the most traction with this product?
At the moment, everybody who's very proactive, so about their health. So somebody who's already making long-term investments. A lot of it is biohackers. So that's a very that's a niche of people who are very enthusiastic about it. And then you have the more early adopter of somebody who's trying a new diet and wants to see if it works for them. And has more of a long-term outlook. So not just for physical appearance, but for some long-term health goal.
Mm-hmm. And what's your kind of aim for Glycanage? Are you trying to focus on that niche, your early adopters, and really double down on your biohackers? Or are you trying to get mass proliferation? Where are you at on that journey?
So you have to, with something new and innovative, you can't attack the whole market. You have to start with a niche that already has a need for something like this. So we do quite well in the longevity industry with biohackers and all of this very early days market. Now we have an element for a broader market, so the weight loss market and menopause. So that's a larger market that we want to go after in the next year and see how we perform there. And then after you go through all the people who are proactive, you have this late adopter market, which is the people who really should do something for their health, but they're not doing anything at the moment. So they generally will have high results to start with, and there'll be a lot of hard work that needs to happen after that. And they're the hardest to convince to change.
Awesome. And at the moment, you're still fully focused on your early adopters for now?
Yeah, for now, early adopters.
And what channels are you seeing work the best for acquiring these users? Are you noticing any? Because I'm assuming the traditional social media routes may not be the most cost-effective for you at this stage.
So yeah, we haven't raised capital yet, apart from my small funding, and we don't have much of a marketing budget. I would disagree on the social media part. So we do see that working with niche clinics and B2B is one good avenue, but in terms of popularizing it with consumers, social media seems to be the best, because when we would just do regular ads, there's not a lot of demand or knowledge about these products. But when we work with influencers, so somebody like a clinician who has a social media following, or a biohacker who has a following, they're quite keen to share our product and talk about it. And do some affiliate marketing. And their community is usually highly engaged and they're happy to try. So we're doing quite well with influencer marketing.
Awesome. And have you done much in the way of content marketing? Are you seeing much traction with, because I imagine with the whole re-education kind of step you have to go through, are you throwing a lot of content and blog content and videos and trying to educate the audience on why this is important?
Yeah, so we launched our Knowledge Hub a few months ago, which is a blog on our website where the scientists try to write popular science. Now, these are still scientists, and they're the only experts in this field at the moment, but they're trying hard, and we have good content, and then we distribute through social. And we try to participate everywhere we can. It's mainly the scientists giving talks and podcasts and niche journals and so forth. So anywhere where we can shout about it, we do that.
Cool. And today, for the people who are looking to really begin the journey on their startup, what would you say the biggest challenge you faced is going from the innovation? I know you didn't have a natural idea as an innovation, going from the innovation to actually turning it into a business where you're serving customers. What would you say the hardest part of that journey was? What didn't come naturally to you that really took you a little time to kind of get a grasp of?
Well, I've launched a few startups before, also without funding. So literally, building websites for people to make some extra capital, which I then reinvest in the startup. And they scaled decently for no funding. So we got to a couple million in revenue, 30 people employed, and so forth. And the hardest thing is this first year or two. So this point where you're trying to figure out your customer, where you're figuring out your route to market, and generally scaling logistics. So finding the right people to delegate to, building the right team, making sure that every detail is covered well. Because the other startups were more in a developed market, so we could just tap into what was there and do a better job. Here it's harder because of the market education, and it took us some time to figure out these hooks, and we're still working on it. So I can't tell you that we'll figure it all out. But the key is talking to your customers. So getting to know them, working with them until you have a product that they love and that really gives them value. So if your feedback is coming back that it's not worth the price, or it's not working for them for some reason, then this is not going to scale, no matter how much money you spend on marketing and everything else. Getting to know your customers and building it around them.
Absolutely. And I think that touches upon one of the common questions I get from particularly bootstrap founders is, how do we know when we've achieved product market fit? I think that's quite a difficult stage for young startups. And it's a very important stage. When you hit it, you know it. And that's always what I try to explain to founders is, when you've hit product market fit. But if I was to try give them, a kind of quantifiable approach, it's almost when you can close 10 to 20 customers who aren't your friends and family. So 10 to 20 people who you found who have actually decided to pay for your product and have expressed that they love the product. I think at that point you can say, okay, I'm onto something. This is something that we can start to move forward and try to scale. But, a lot of people get 20 to 30, 40 of their friends to sign up and feel like they've got product market fit. It's not a natural audience because they're not paying most of the time, their friends and family, and it's not really scalable at that point. What's your view of product market fit?
I think you're constantly looking for product market fit. So you can find product market fit within a niche, but that could be a very small niche. So every time you enter a different market or you scale, you need to look for it again, because every customer has a different need and opinions and wants. So you have to reiterate pretty much constantly until you've reached a very broad public, and that's a long process.
Absolutely. Is there an online portal as part of you have an online portal, don't you, where people can view their results?
They have an online dashboard. We're going to take it into mobile, hopefully by next year or a bit sooner. But on this dashboard, they have access to the specialists as well, so they can talk to them, reach out to them, and then schedule telemedicine consultations.
Awesome. So you're like a hybrid between a biotech business and also a SaaS business at the same time.
Yeah, well.
I thought my job is bad because I have to deal with developers. You have to deal with developers and scientists.
And doctors and physicians. So it's,
and then your customers are athletes.
And everything else. Yeah, and biohackers and moms. Well, slowly it will be a lot of different demographics. It's not a standard model. What I found is going direct to consumer with a health product can be quite dangerous when they don't understand them. So if they get back a high result and there's nobody for them to talk to, or they can't understand what's written in the report, you're not going to have a good reaction or good engagement with the product in the future. And this is not a DNA test that you do once. It's something that you should repeat. So we have to focus on retention. At the moment, we achieve this by pairing them with specialists and giving them the confidence and the support they need to reverse a high result. And that seems to work, and that creates loyalty, that makes them recommend their partners and their family. And I think it's the right way to scale.
Absolutely. So kind of changing topics now, moving on to fundraising. So I know you're looking to raise your next round. It's quite a common topic amongst founders. And I know I mentioned this in a previous episode as well. How do you know when it's a good time to raise a round? What was it that what was the catalyst that made you decide, okay, it's time to raise some funds? Was it we just ran out, or are you thinking proactively to this is what we need to do next? We've got product market fit. We're seeing some traction. I just want to scale it and get the engine moving. What was it in your head? And it's different for everybody, but what was it for you specifically that made you figure you need to raise some funds?
Well, actually, this is the first time I'm trying to raise institutional funding or angel at the start. I think it was more the long-term view and scale. So it's not that we are we can carry on we have a good runway. It's not that we need to start now. And I wanted to be proactive and get feedback from investors and see what they're actually looking for and what their opinion is on something like this. And we have a couple of angels that are already committed, and we're getting some good feedback, but nothing official yet. Every fund has different requirements. Some of them will say they want, if they're consumer focused, they want to see a certain level of traction or market adoption or revenue. If they're more deep tech, they're looking for more IP value and things like that. So I think for us, it would be great to raise in the next couple of months so we can scale in the most efficient way and deliver that value on the right level. And we do have IP, so we have patents, US and European patent, but it's always good to be as ahead of your competitors as you can.
Mm-hmm. So. And in your industry, in your space particularly, you're finding that the VC funds, the institutional funds are primarily focused on the technology you have, or are they more focused on the growth for your specific business?
Well, now definitely technology, because we've only just started. And there's some traction, but usually they want to see $1 million in revenue, although it is more Series A. But
do you have any competitors with your technology, Nikolina? Is there anybody else doing exactly what you're doing?
Not with glycans. So there's other tests for biological age using different markers. Glycans are not a novel field in research, but a novel field commercially, where we have an advantage because of the advancement of the lab. So we won't see anybody using our technology, I think, for some time now. But of course, it's far. There is other things people will try to do, and also the worry there is that if they create if you don't get the right results from the market alternatives, you may dismiss the whole potential, and I think some of them have gone to market a bit too early.
Mm-hmm. So does your patent then mean that nobody can create technology which uses glycans for biological age? Or are you the only guys that can do that?
It's a patent on our methodology, and it's the key asset is our know-how and our baseline, which is pretty significant at 80,000. So not on our level, no, but everybody can try and work around a patent. So for some future ones like diabetes markers, there we have a really high level patent that nobody else can use Glycomics to do. So yeah.
So then the question arises then, if somebody was to knock up a spoof version of your website tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and they had some sort of way of measuring biological age with glycans, similar, and they tried to profess to be able to do it the same way that you could, how does the layperson who's reading your marketing, who's landed on your website, know that Glycanage is the real deal versus this spoof website? What is there that I would understand when coming onto your website, say this is an accurate measure of my biological age versus so-and-so company?
Another good thing for us and a lack in the industry is labs are not high throughput. So there's only another university lab, which is high throughput Glycomics, which means that they can handle a lot of volume, which for us is just under 100,000 samples a year at the moment and growing pretty quickly in terms of capacity. So if you compare it to like the smaller glycan analysis labs, they process about 1,000 samples per year, and that's really hard for them to do. And you can't really scale a big business at 1,000 tests per year, so they have to charge premium rates for it, and they would really struggle. So we're restricted both in access to the lab and IP.
Understood. So that's for the throughput and therefore the pricing. How about the accuracy of the score? So how do you validate that your score is providing a more accurate score to another lab? If that makes sense.
Because of also baseline is significant, and our the methodology in the lab. Even if we would remeasure in a month or two time, if you haven't done any significant change, you will have the same result. The error margins are very low on retesting, so you can quantify it with the effects of your intervention. And I think a good example is maybe comparing it with other alternatives to measure biological age, like telomeres. Mm-hmm. Telomeres are pretty much out because there was a high-level study that couldn't correlate them to any significant health outcomes. And telomeres are a good marker for the age of a cell. So they're like this. The problem is we have trillions of cells, so depends, and where you collect them, they will come back differently. So when you're retesting, you wouldn't see a reliable change or result. So they're not very efficient in that.
Just kind of thinking out loud, is there a way to, I mean, if you're taking the average Joe, if I wanted to, I was just curious about my biological age. I'm not an athlete. I'm not somebody who's going to measure it monthly. I'm just curious, right? Everybody's doing it on social media. I want to do it too. Is there a way for you to have like a stage pricing ladder where if I'm just curious and I don't mind if there's a greater degree of inaccuracy, that it may be mine's plus or minus 5 years difference versus an athlete who wants to go for a higher package, who wants a full accuracy? Is that possible? Would that allow you to scale quicker because you can do higher throughput on the less accurate test, or is it not set up like that with the lab?
So now even on your report, you see plus or minus 5 years from your first result. But when we retest you, the error margin is far lower. So the change you see in between is different. If we would increase our error margin to, let's say, a 0.5%, that wouldn't be able to quantify your intervention. So you couldn't reliably say, because I've changed my diet or lost some weight, I've had a change. It could be completely random. So that's why we would not want to move in that direction at this point. And we do include the specialists in our pricing. So the pricing is high because you have a real physician working with you to get the result. And we try to offset the cost by offering subscriptions at £25 per month, which I think is quite affordable. So yeah, I don't think we can keep quality.
At £25 a month, how many tests am I getting?
It's once a year, but you have quarterly access to the physicians.
Right. So it's going to measure it at one date a year. The score will come 2 to 4 weeks later. But quarterly, I can speak to the physician to get some guidance on what to improve.
Yes. So he'll measure your progress as well.
But they're not through calculating another age.
No, but you have, at the moment, this is done by forms. But when we develop the app, we'll collect data from your Apple Watch, from your Apple Health, or wherever we can pull some data that you're already collecting on your own, so you don't need to fill in the forms.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, the physicians will review this and give you advice based on that. But in the future, we'll have a little notification system which will say, this week was great for you, you slept amazing, you went for a run 3 times, this is going to change your result in a positive way. Or we'll give you another update and say, okay, this week wasn't so good. Why don't you try again next week? Or something like that.
That'd be pretty cool. Dr. Joseph, get off the couch, you fat ass. That's what he's going to say.
Not quite, but yeah.
You move all week. I've just checked the API on your Apple Watch. You've not done any activity. It's not good at all. Cool. That's very interesting. I definitely like the whole wellness and well-being and even mental with apps like Headspace and a lot of meditation apps like Calm. It's definitely an area where people are spending more money and making more investment, and they're more curious about that kind of a field. So it's definitely interesting. But the key thing is that definitely, I mean, we've been speaking here for 35 minutes. I'm starting to understand what the product does. So there's definitely an education barrier between just, kind of hearing about the product and understanding why is it going to be a benefit and is it worth the price point that we're going to spend. Have you found that's a big challenge?
Well, I think because we came from a research lab, we're not, we're kind of adverse to hype, and we don't really give this, like these marketing promises that we're not 100% sure that we can deliver on. And, it's something that, you can even say today, if we can save you 10 years of healthy life, is it worth it? I think absolutely yes. But, we're taking it step by step and making sure that everything we suggest and claim is supported by a ton of research. So we'll get to some high level claims with time, but at the moment we have to work with biological age and longevity and educate you on those 2 things.
Awesome. And in terms of kind of some of the more business aspects, shifting away from the actual product and the biology and the tech behind it, more of the business aspects, how have you found that? Do you head up the majority of the business side of things and stay away from more of the biology, or how do you balance your time? So if we take a typical SaaS founder, normally you have a SaaS founder who's either the entrepreneur sales guy or you have the dev guy. And they're normally one of those 2 fields, and they like to either product or they like to focus on sales. How do you manage your time between these different fields, or do you just keep switching hats?
Well, I like to focus on the customer. So we have a great scientist, they're doing the research. I'm not one of them. We don't need more of them. We have a great CTO. He's making sure all of our technology works. We would define the direction together and come up with ideas what we can do next. But I mainly focus on listening to our customer, and that's one of the reason I implemented this high people contact at the start, because I really want to see. I want to have enough feedback there so that when we create a product which is completely remote, that it really does bring the value. I don't think you can do this without understanding a market and building something in line with them.
So you mentioned listening to your customers, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, shameless plug, obviously, for Growhawk. Do you use any tools to gather feedback from your customers, and how do you loop that back into your product to make sure that you're always taking on the latest feedback?
Yeah, at the moment, we talk to them on the phone. We have intercom on their website, so they ask us loads of questions there. We're exploring ways to automate it. So there's a new app called Viable Fit that we're just trialing, so I can't tell you much about it. And I think
you need to speak to me about Growhawk. We need to get you set up.
Okay. Yeah, and surveys. So sending a survey every now and then. But I think the most important conversations still happen on the phone because you can ask a bit deeper questions. It's more private, and yeah.
Do you measure any specific scores, like Net Promoter Score or customer satisfaction, customer effort score? Do you measure any of these?
Not yet, but we will. So not enough data quite yet. We're just about getting enough data for our Facebook pixels. So
absolutely. And then I assume once you get that feedback from Intercom or your various channels, how does that feed back to your CTO and the teams to make the changes? Do you have that all? Does it all funnel back?
Well, a lot of it. So we on our main email, it comes to pretty much everybody. So not everybody is actively replying, but everybody can view. And then we collect it on a monthly basis, and we go through it and see if we're getting some constant feedback that's the same, and then we decide what we're going to do the next month. So one of them was this: what happens after a test? So the first assumption is that you can sell the test on its own. And that just does not work. You have to give them a solution. You can't just sell them a problem. So our very simple way of saying is the scientists find the problems and the physicians find the solutions. So
no, completely agree with you. And in terms of when you're getting positive survey responses, people have had a great experience. Have you managed to tap into the referral loop? I know this is a big tactic that a lot of large companies have used to get the viral loop going for their product and increasing their brand awareness. Have you tried, and again, shameless plug, we do this within our platform for various clients. Have you tried to create that viral loop so that when somebody scored you a 9 or a 10, you now ask them, hey, you've had a great service with us. Why not share it with your friends? And you push them to Facebook, WhatsApp, Google, all these platforms. Have you built anything in that, or have you thought about that?
We definitely need to do that some very near future. So we have a lot of the business does come from referral. So if you have like a lot of times people will want to test their partner, they will want to test their father. At one point we had a sign up with 7 last names which were the same. So there's a big referral element there, and it's mainly focused on people who are very close to you. So family and close friends. And yeah, absolutely, we should automate it because now it's pretty much via email, or they have a little button on the dashboard that they rarely see, but they use sometimes.
Like, honestly, it doesn't even need to be fancy. We all know Dropbox, and Dropbox use one of the best referral hacks ever. You signed up for a Dropbox account. What's the one thing you want when you've got a Dropbox account? You want more storage. So they link the referral to the storage. So it's same with you. If I'm buying your product, I'm going to want more tests. So if I'm taking 1 test every year, maybe you can offer me an extra test at the halfway mark if I refer 10 of my friends. And in building that into the platform at the point of purchase or shortly thereafter, that's exactly what Dropbox did. And they just they got that viral loop going because everybody was sharing on social media to unlock an extra gig of data. And then the wheel just kept going. And you didn't need to touch it because it just kept looping around. So definitely a kind of a business tip for those listening is try to figure out the viral loop. No different to COVID right now. Everybody's hearing about this R number, which is your viral coefficient. And it's the same in business. If your viral coefficient is greater than 1, it means for every 1 person that's buying your product or being exposed to your product, they're telling more than 1 person about their product. And if you can hack that, that's how you start to get the scale that, when you're fundraising and you're looking for VCs, they're looking for that kind of growth. A 0.9 coefficient is saying, every time somebody's exposed to it, 0.9 people are hearing about your product. So eventually that's going to tend to 0. Okay. So it's important to kind of get that viral coefficient going for those youngsters. And there's no proven formula. There's a lot of different hacks and tricks you can try, and you just got to A/B test it. It's just different for your product. But the one thing that is a good tip to take away is link it to the wow moment of your product. So like I said, with Dropbox, the wow moment is to have that storage. So if people want the storage, that's what they're there for, then you can link the referral to that product. Don't refer based on, hey, I'm going to give you an iPad. That's going to be a false economy because you're going to get people who want iPads, not your product. So, these contests and giveaways, whilst you can get loads of leads, who's to say they're qualified leads? Cool. So, Nikolina, what's next for you and Glycanage? What's the next? We've just emerging out of COVID. Hopefully, the labs start to pick up and stop doing COVID tests, and they can do some of your tests. What does it look like for you over the next, well, whatever we have left this year and going into 2021?
Well, focusing on traction, but making sure we retain the users. So making sure we have a very low churn. Generally, growth and traction, so that we can also hopefully get a more attractive offer when we fundraise. And then, on the product development side, the more we can automate this data collection, the easier it will be. And also, there's the people element is very important. So we have a number of specialists now, but we're always looking for more of them and for them to have more experience with our product.
Absolutely. And churn, such a big point you brought up here at the end. Churn for any tech company or biotech or any startup really can be the silent killer if you don't get it right. And especially with VC funds, they're looking at that churn number. Because you got to understand, what are the unit economics of building the type of business we're building is you're paying upfront through your marketing, through your content marketing, for all the channels to bring a customer to Glycanage. So you're in negative. You've spent the money. They finally come to Glycanage, and now you're hoping that you have a lifetime value for that customer. So in SaaS, they say a healthy business can spend between a third to a fifth of the lifetime value to acquire a customer, right? So if a customer's going to spend on average with me £1,000 over the next year, I can spend 200 to 333 pounds to acquire that customer. But if I spend that money up front, I've spent the £200, they're a user of mine, but then they churn after 2 months, I'm now in negative. And quickly you'll find yourself ending up in a false economy where you're spending money, you're celebrating because everyone's hitting quota and we're signing clients up, but your churn rate at the bottom is meaning you're never seeing the lifetime value. Because it's not like we're not buying a handbag or a mobile phone where you transact today and therefore you're getting the full value up front. And that's why another tip for kind of startups out there is always have a annual subscription. Even though monthly's better for people to sign up and for their cash flow, for your cash flow, you can incentivize people even with up to 25% off, that if they purchase annually, that's going to help you on your cash flow. And it also means you're going to avoid that churn issue. But again, it comes down to what you were saying, Nikolina. It's listening to the customers and make sure they're being wowed. And at a small stage company, you literally, as a founder, you do have enough time, and it should be your only priority to speak to every single one of your customers, right? Like you said, the scientists do what they're doing, let the developers do what they're doing. And as founders, we just need to speak to our customers and find out what it is, listen to their experience, what could be improved, how can we make it better, and make sure they're not going to churn. Because churn doesn't come out of the blue. They think about it first. They know things aren't going the right way and that they're not going to renew. Or in your case, they're not going to take another test next year. How can we resolve that or smooth that process out? Any thoughts on churn, Nikolina?
Yeah, sometimes it can be something super simple, like customer support. I think a lot of companies fail on that. For some reason, they think it's not important. But no matter how advanced the product is, how much science you have behind it, if you have terrible customer support, you will lose customers. So
definitely. And what was the second point you said after churn? I was going to say something about your second point. Never mind, I've lost it. So I think that's a good place to leave it, is just reduce that churn. Automations, that's what you mentioned. You mentioned automations. And again, this doesn't have to, like, a lot of startups think, oh, automation, I need to buy this expensive software or have this expensive bespoke development. There's so many platforms out there. Look into Zapier, look into If This Then That. There are so many automation tools which can, if you sift through your day and what your team are spending time on doing manually, how can we automate that so you don't have to worry about it? It's just going to trigger and we can move on. That's the idea. It doesn't need to be bespoke software.
Yeah, I think that's also about having good developers. So I think one amazing characteristic of a good developer is that they're lazy. So if they know they can create a tool that will do this for them again, so they never need to do it again, they will, like our developer, I remember we wanted these promo codes that we can customize to each person. So we told him, make us just one code, don't worry about it. And then he worked until 3 a.m. until he made us a system to generate our own codes. So now we never, ever need to ask him again. So having those people on the team is great for automation.
Really helpful. And for those companies which, I know this, even using the developer can be a commodity if the developers need to focus on your main product. Maybe there's a small marketing piece, like you're saying there, with the voucher codes or something like that, which they don't have time to do. In that case, there are little plugins, there are things that founders can figure out themselves without a developer that just gets it moving. And that might not be 100% the way you want it, but at least you can prove the concept, stitch it together really quickly using Wix and WordPress and some plugins and Zapier here, and just things you can figure out without a developer. And then if you see traction and it's working and it's a good feature that everybody wants, then you can put it into the product roadmap for the developers to do down the line. And I think that's a great way, because I mean, that's one of your highest overheads is your developers. And so if you're tasking them to do features or work on features which are a hunch, which you have no idea it's going to work, or if it's going to, customers are going to take to it, it's worth stitching together a mini MVP within your company just to see if it works, like a little test campaign.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Too many features at the start definitely kills the product.
Cool, Nikolina. Let's give us one takeaway tip for any early stage founders out there who are emerging out of their lockdown, ready to get back into things and get the ball moving. What's your one takeaway tip, apart from find out what their age is?
Let me see. That's not an easy one. I think part is don't give up too early. So it absolutely takes time and a couple iterations until you get it right. Make sure you iterate, so don't be stuck if it's not working, but also don't give up on it too early.
Cool. You said it. Nikolina, thank you for your time today, and enjoy the rest of the heat wave in London.
Thank you, Jazz.
Cool. Take care.
Great to talk to you.
Pleasure.
Take care.